My father had a lot of hair. And when I was young, I remember him telling me that I shouldn't wear, any baseball caps or something like that, because that would not be good for your hair. And, worst case, you would be balding. And I remember seeing my uncle at the beach when I was a small boy, and he had to put suntan lotion on the top of his head to make sure he didn't burn it. And I thought it looked pathetic. Like, I don't want that to happen. I'm not going to wear any baseball caps. Why take the risk? It didn't work. And that's sort of the point with my presentation today, is that things aren't always what you expect. You can never really prepare for what's going to happen next. And on very many different layers. So I could have been talking about a lot of code today, but as we saw yesterday, there were enough code talks, like really good presenters, really good topics. And when I got asked to speak here at this conference, I asked if I could do something completely different, something that I've never done before either. And they went, yeah, sure, go for it. Which is always risky if you're a conference organizer, but I'm going for it. So what I want to say is that feel free to give me feedback on Twitter and what you think and any ideas. And also, unless you're interested in the actual content of the talk today, if you actually want code or want to discuss development, you can also do that on Twitter. So before I continue, I'm Swedish. I'm from Sweden. And Norway, we need to talk. It's a sad state of affairs to leave your home country, to go to another country, to see that your people have become slaves. And I'm probably the only Swede in this country right now that's not doing some kind of a shit job. So the background here for people who don't know is that we have a number of Swedes. I'm not kidding, that they come to Norway and they work with peeling bananas. And of course, we get some of the feedback that, they could have had monkeys, but the monkeys were just eating the bananas, so the Swedes were better. And we had some nice quotes about it as well. So I'm a bit terrified to be up here under those circumstances, but, And just to give a little background on me, so my name is Robert, okay? And Roberts go through different life stages. We're small and cute, we're the Robbie, we're the cool Rob guy. Like me being a Robert, hair-wise, I'm way past Bob. It's too late for me. Right, I can't go further. So I'm basically here to save you. How can I, make sure that you don't go down the same path as I did, holding on to the tombstone, basically. So what I wanted to talk about today is how everyone is spending their lives. What's your work like? What do you actually do? Because we're such creatures of just routines. We're doing the same things day in and day out. You might go to a conference or something like that, but otherwise you just do it the same over and over and over, which is sort of killing us. You get up way too early in the morning, then, way too early compared to when we should be supposed to be getting up. You maybe eat some breakfast. Today it's bacon, which is better morning, but it's still sort of the same thing. And then probably you commute to work and you sit there, and the different kind of commuters as well. Like you have people actually try to get something out of it. People that haven't given up yet. But you also have the kind of commuters that are just, staring out the window, and you can just see them mouthing the words, "Kill me now." So what I do want to talk about, and I talk about many different things, is how can we sort of get out of that? How can we change our own perspective on that? So in your everyday life, do you actually think about what you get out of it? Like you're probably getting paid well enough, if you're a web developer. you have a decent life, it's okay. But what kind of results are you actually achieving? How are you getting to the next step? And I've been working for a long, long time with web development, like a long time. And it's interesting with all these different methods, like how do you approach things? And we have Agile. Agile is going to save you. If you do Agile, it's going to be fantastic. But then, of course, then you have product managers running around like, oh, the velocity. And at the end of the day, I think it's so common, and no matter which method you use, it comes down to common sense. Like, what results are we actually getting? Why are we working with something, and what's the end result? I don't care about graphs. I don't care about numbers. Like we always, I mean, I have to in my work as well, play the numbers game. What are the metrics? How many visitors to this website, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what does it actually mean? What do we get out of it? And, quantity versus quality and stuff like that. So many, many years ago, I quit my day job and I went traveling, which seemed like a good idea at the time. And I always sort of nurtured this dream of coming into the movie industry. And my aunt was a famous Swedish actress. And my idea was to sort of, do the same thing, walk in her footsteps or something like that. So I knew this guy who was fairly well known in Sweden working as a set decorator. So basically for movies and small commercials and stuff like that, he was working on decorating the set. Basically building things up and making sure that everything looked like, every detail, like the tablecloth and all that, were in line with what you wanted to convey with the commercial. So I told him, I had this naive idea. I told him, like, I'll work for you for free for the experience. That kind of bullshit that, it never pays off, but you say it because it sounds good and you saw it in some movie with Tom Cruise or something and you want to be the same. So I told him that I'll follow along with you. I'll work with you for free. And it was sort of okay. We had a few intense days when just making really bad commercials, but at least he was getting paid a lot and I was getting experience. But it got to the point when we had this commercial we were doing for a Finnish company, all respect to Finland. But it was this company that in their logo, they had a number of different yellow balls. So apparently in every commercial they did, these balls had to be in there. And with the set decorator and all that, we had to make sure that these balls were sort of authentic in line with the corporate image for this company, because that was really important to get the right shade of yellow on these balls. So the idea was that the set decorator, he went out and he bought these, Christmas decorations or Christmas balls, shiny red balls. But that, of course, was the wrong color. So my work here was having sandpaper and sandpapering off all the red color so we could get into the plastic. So I spent days, with bleeding hands, making sure that these balls weren't red anymore. That was my part. And then next part on the belt was someone filling them with sand so they have the correct weight when they were falling in the commercial. And then we need to sort of spray color them. And when you stand there sandpapering Christmas balls, you're sort of thinking like, my career can't get much better. Like I'm peaking right now. But I think many people now, and you as well, like in your everyday work, when you build something, like when you're building an intranet and the button is a bit off in Internet Explorer, that for me, that's sort of the same thing as sandpapering Christmas balls. We need to get out of that. We need to get much, much more out of what we do. And I think what the thing is that we always try to fit in. This actually took some time for me to finding the eggplant, which probably says something about my visual impairment as well. But that's the thing. We're so afraid of going outside of the boundaries or leaving the box of the thing we should be contained in. And it sounds like such a cliche, like, yeah, sure, but I'm an individual, I'm original. And I don't think that's true in most cases. I think we think we're taking the risks of doing something, but we just stick around doing the same thing. And I can only say for myself, like I grew up, I was a really, really shy boy. And I was terrified talking to people. And And also with my parents, especially my father, traveled quite a bit, not in the same line of business, but and I travel a fair bit too. But I think when he and my mother went away traveling and they came home, I ran around the house and hid behind it because I was so afraid. It's like, oh, people, holy shit. And I think we're sort of the same in our jobs. Like we smile and we nod, but conflict, that's terrifying. And we don't want to stand up for what we actually believe. So, kind of like we try to handle it in a good way. Like Max was talking about yesterday, you have commits. And you thank them for the commit, you hug them, and then you change the semicolon after. And I think that's the same thing we do at work as well, at best. At best, we treat people with respect and say thank you, but then, we talk shit behind their backs. So we need to get out of that. We need to stop being afraid of having a different opinion. Having a different opinion doesn't mean that it's a fight or it's a conflict or that you hate each other. It's just different. And I think a big thing, especially on the web, and the web has made it so much easier to be a whiny bastard without getting blamed for it. Like, all the feedback we see is basically just saying that something is, or someone is not as good as you are. So in general, I can see why so many people are afraid of sticking out. And this sort of comes back to the being shy or going out to the boundaries, is that as soon as people try to do anything, they get shut down. And they get criticized. And was it not yesterday, the day before, with the open mic night here, and people trying to give presentations, they probably haven't done it before, or not many times, but they think like, oh yeah, I'll go for it. And that's terrifying. Like, they're the bravest people at this conference, because to go up on a small stage with maybe less than optimal sound system, and people drinking beer and then just want to talk, and to give a presentation, to stand up there, to be brave enough. And I think, and what I want to say to them is that they're way better than we are up on this stage. I mean, we get the spotlights, we get all the attention. I can plead to this guy to turn up the volume really, really high. They don't have that. And I'm so afraid that they're going to do it once, that they're going to think, well, this was shit. I'm never going to give a presentation ever again. But please do. Like, we always need to go through these steps of well, this sucks, but it gets better. And I think that's the main aim. And also, of course, when it comes to discussions, you discuss code with your colleagues. On which line are we supposed to put the curly braces? Like, is the curly brace going to be on the same line or on the next line? Clearly the same line. But anyway. And also, I was talked about yesterday with the tabs versus spaces and semicolons and all that. Why are we fighting about this? Like, it's ridiculous. Like, it is, and it's such a trend also, and sort of having my political opinion here, but it's kind of in the Western world. We're so spoiled anyway. Like, if we have time to actually bitch about on which lines to put semicolons, or if to have them in there or not, Christ. So I think my advice, in a good article was by Paul Graham about how to disagree. And it's a really long article, I can fit it into a screenshot. But it's lots of good, different advice. How can you be constructive? Like, it's okay with criticism. Like, criticism is not bad. That's how we grow. That's how we make each other improve, and how we improve ourselves. Because that's the worst thing. Like, you build something, you have some code on GitHub and you show it to people, but you only show it to your best friends, and everyone's going to pat your back and say, hey, you're really good. And that's okay, but you don't get further. Like, you don't get better out of that. So I strongly recommend reading this article, because it's good advice actually how to discuss things. Also, and it's not only with disagreeing, but also about discussing. And usually when people give feedback, and no matter what kind of feedback, if it's good feedback or bad feedback, like, you show them a web page or something, and you get the feedback, yeah, this is really good, or no, I hate it, and don't say anything more. Always when you give feedback, motivate your feedback. Say, like, if you think something is good, tell you why it's good. Like, I love the box shadow. I'm getting aroused. No. But I love the box shadow, right? Or something. Go into detail. And if something is bad, same thing, like tell them why it's bad. Because that's the only way we can improve. Just giving feedback without any motivation behind it, or at least not being open about it, is useless. And it's also the mentality of tearing things down when things come out there. I think it was a couple of days ago, there was an article on the web, there was an article, and it was claiming that, web code now is almost as fast as native. Whatever native means, but it's almost as fast as native. And it took about 1 minute, and of course the first feedback was that, but that's like comparing a Ferrari to a Volkswagen Beetle, right? Native is the real thing, and a Beetle is just a Beetle, right? So I think I would prefer the kind of people that drive a Beetle over the people who drive a Ferrari. But that's maybe just my opinion. And B, it sort of comes back to what's the use? Like, we can have all the micro benchmarks in the world, and the web might not be as fast in some cases. It might be faster in other cases. But is it only about speed? Like, speed is important, and we can talk about speed versus engagement. But what's the actual point of building something? What is, and I hate myself for saying words like this, but what is the value with the things you're building? It doesn't matter if it's fast, if it's crap, right? And another problem, I think, is that we don't really listen to each other. And in general, like, we nod and that's about it. But online, if you look at all the different forums, people are just, yelling or saying bad things or something like that. And I can say in my own case, like, I'm editor of the Mozilla Hacks blog. And we get a lot of comments, which is basically whatever we talk about. If we talk about Firefox, you get a comment like, well, fuck you. Your product sucks. You should burn in hell. And you have a few ways of sort of dealing with that comment. Like, how do you take that comment? One, and usually the advice I get from colleagues, like, well, just delete it. Or, mark it as spam and they will never get through again. And that sort of helps, but it's a short-term solution. The second option, which is definitely not a good option, is to fight back. It's like, no, fuck you, you're even worse. You can sort of, it could be fun for a while, but you don't really get that much out of it. And people are, well, no, you should be proud, you should protect your product. But I think at the end of the day, and what's really, really important to know, no matter if it's a blog or a forum or if it's at work, a majority of people, I would claim everyone, just needs to be acknowledged. They just need to be heard. Because, and especially with internet, everyone's just shouting out into cyberspace and no one replies. And of course they try harder things. Like right now in Sweden, I'm going out on a limb here. Right now in Sweden, we have a number of riots in suburbs around Stockholm. And people burning cars and people not happy with their life situation. I'm not going to delve too deep into that, but the thing there is, of course, that everyone that's not living in those areas is thinking, no, you should stop burning cars. That's terrible. I don't think anyone thinks burning cars is a good idea. But the results they've gotten is that media from around the world are covering this. Like if they were just to send a really angry letter to their local politician, you would not get the same feedback. So I definitely not say it's right, but you need to understand the underlying thing, like how did we get there? And I think it all ties into being acknowledged. Like if you don't get heard, if you don't get help, if you don't have any proper feedback or feeling that you're getting anywhere, people get frustrated. We have good lives. Most people don't. And so think about that. Think about making sure that people know that they're actually heard. And with comments and coming back to the blog, I usually reply to people that tell me to fuck off, because when you talk with them, and I didn't want to bring in screenshots to sort of, well, put people on the screen, but I've had a conversation that starts like that, and I tell them, well, just if you adjust your tone and you explain what you think it's a problem, and then we'll talk about it. And I've had a number of conversations online that sort of started with me burning in hell and sort of climbing out of hell into something actually constructive. It's like, oh, you don't like the keyboard shortcut. I understand. And then you can sort of build on top of that, which is really, really helpful. And it's interesting because as long as you just give them some time and some attention, you're good, right? And I mean, we're in Norway and you have trolls. Trolls aren't that bad. They're just different. And you need to, different like saying interesting, could be anything, but it's not that bad. They just need to be talked to. And I think it's also the matter of a two-way communication. I talk with a number of people that they want to put their material online. They want to blog about something. But most people say like, yeah, I'm not going to turn comments on. Like, I don't have time to deal with comments or, have discussions with people or trolls or whatever. And I think that's a big mistake. Like, sure, we can look at YouTube and newspaper magazines and all that to prove that mankind probably aren't worth much more than peeling bananas. But in most cases, it has to be a two-way communication. Because if you make a blog or whatever into just a major press release or a one-way communication thing, it's just you with a bullhorn shouting. Like, let's say you go to a party, or let's say out in the restaurant yesterday, if I go up and I talk to someone and I say, well, this is my opinion, and when I'm done talking, I leave. Like, it wouldn't, well, some people do, but in general, it wouldn't really work in real life because that's not the way you act. But online, it's okay. Like, it's my website. I can say whatever I want, but I don't have to listen to you. It's like, yeah, but then you can sort of go to the bathroom and speak to yourself instead. We need the communication to be better as humans. And then it comes to the topic of learning. How should we learn stuff? And I think that's not really important. Like, everyone comes back to working with Agile and other things, like, it has to be the right method, one method to rule them all. And that's not the way it works. Like, we need to find whatever way works, and different way works for different people. How can we actually learn things and become better? And I think we need to continue to learn all the time. And I think the most important part is that we challenge ourselves. Like, we get out of our normal routines. Like, if you use a certain operating system or a certain tool or something like that, how can we make it harder for us? Because the problem is that we're getting stuck in just the same path that we always do. And I can say for myself, like, apparently I use Mac OS X. I got my workflow nailed down to a T. Like, I know exactly what to do with everything. Like, I could do it blindfolded, probably. We'll probably say something about the quality of my code as well, but still. So how would I get out of that? So I got the opportunity recently to try Chrome OS. And I was going with it full time for a few weeks just to see what it's like, because I go up on stage and I claim that the web is fantastic, and it's efficient and you can do everything with it. But I don't use it for everything. So, would it work? And stuff like that is a really interesting exercise. How far can we push things? And even if you use something that's not as good as the things you're used to, it doesn't mean it isn't as good as the things you're used to. It's just that you're so used to the things you've been doing all the time that you're stuck in them. And in most cases, I think we're too young to get stuck or to give up or to just do things the same way. We need to try it a different way. And it might be terrible, and it might take twice the time to accomplish something, but at least we learn something from it. We get a different perspective. And I think it's also about combining things. Like Reginald was talking about yesterday, we don't need to start over. Let's say we have all this old stuff, and then we just build on top of that. How can we make something more out of what we already have? Try a different perspective, a different angle. And of course, and it's such a given, but we need to share more things. We need to make sure that whatever we do, we share it with other people. And then people keep on talking about that put your code on GitHub, make sure that everyone can contribute and stuff like that. And that's really important. But in all different channels like Twitter, Google+, Facebook, whatever, share what you have and sort of tie that into the two-way communication and getting feedback and acknowledging people. because that's how your product or your code is going to be better. Like generally overall, I think all code should be open source because people can look at it, people can give feedback, and people can make it better. I also hope that more people will be blogging. Like a long time ago when I started blogging, there weren't that many of us. Like we sort of knew everyone at that time. And now we've gotten a bit lazy, I think, with it. Like 140 characters. How am I supposed to fill up 140 characters? So we need to get back to actually writing and sharing what you have and explaining what we have. Most people are like, they're excellent tools, and people's like, no, you should go to where all the users are, no matter if it's Hacker News or Twitter or whatever. But the problem is that it's just like blinking. It shows up there and then it's gone. And in some cases, it's okay. But in general, most things need to stick around. Like people are going to come around 5 or 10 years later and the same discussions with JavaScript or scoping or whatever. People still need to find that kind of information. And it needs to be proper information, not just like, shooting from the hips, like semicolons suck, and that's it. So I really want to encourage you to think about that, like write more, and it's worth it because it's like at work when you build something, it doesn't really work, and then you go over to a colleague's desk and you try to explain your problem to them, and you talk for about 5 minutes, and while you're talking, you're solving the problem in your head because you have to explain it to someone else, and basically you just have to sit there and drool and listen for 5 minutes, and then you take off again. And I sort of see, I think it's a fair comparison, but I see blogging the same way. When you write about something, you share about something, you actually have to think things through. Why do they actually work? And it's also about getting attention for projects. Like in the blog I run, we had a really good article by Peter Cooper, who's running the HTML5 Weekly and JavaScript Weekly, etc. emails, and he's doing lots of things for O'Reilly. And just writing, how can you get more attention for the things you're doing? Because, way back when I started blogging, it wasn't that hard to get attention. Like I was the same kind of person. I would go into other blogs, the nice commenter saying, oh, nice blog, look at what I did. That kind of person. But it's hard now. There's so many more developers and there's so much more noise. But it's a really good article, just how can you stand out? How can you get enough attention for what you're doing? And not just for you getting attention, but actually to make the world better by sharing the good things you built. Email. Everyone's claiming that email is terrible. Like there has to be something better. And we have all these other things like whatever, Twitter, we had Google Wave for a while, etc., etc., etc. I think as long as we have email, just answer your emails. Because that sort of sets the bar. Like I get a shitload of emails and I still keep on replying. Because if you don't reply to people sending emails to you, don't have an email address. That's my opinion. And I know you hate it, but you need to spend time with it. You need to talk with people. And it comes back to acknowledging people as well. It doesn't have to be long emails. It doesn't have to be essays. But just give them feedback. If you don't have the time, like, especially feeling like this, you're traveling and you're on conference Wi-Fi and all that, you reply, no, I'm blah, 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 I'm at a conference, I'll get back to you or something. But just talk to people. It's just the same thing, like walking around and people talk to you and you don't reply. Or, way back when we actually got letters in a post box to our homes. How would it work if we no, I'm not going to get things out of a post box for 2 weeks. It's going to be a fucking mess out there on the streets, but I'm not in the mood for getting my mail right now. And this is sort of the digital equivalent of that. And we need to change that. And when it comes to tools, I think one thing that's funny, like I have daughters, and when I visit my mom and my, one of my daughters might be ill, she has this approach, like, we talk about it, and, maybe she has fever. And of course, instead of a thermometer or something like that, mom brings out this old fever strip from the 70s. I don't know if you ever saw it, but it's a strip of paper that you put on your forehead. And it basically, after a little while, you can see a letter on the strip, which basically says, no fever or fever or high fever, like called emergency room, basically. I'm sure it's very exact as well in its values. And it's just the thing, though, like, with all respect to my mom, but you sort of, like, she does have an actual thermometer as well, but you get stuck in the way you've been doing things all your life. And that's the same thing, like, well, this fever strip worked on you, you survived. Yeah, luckily. But, still, we keep on evolving. We can do so much better than that. And I think, talking about Chrome OS and getting out of our comfort zone, with your tools that you have, no matter if it's, in most cases, I guess for you, it's editors or it could be an email client or something like that. Make sure that you know your tools. Make sure that you can actually utilize them to the max. And if you talk with people that use Vim or Emacs, they do that. Maybe a bit too religious in some cases, but they make sure that they know everything they can do with their tool. And that's really, really important. And just a brief mention also of meetings, and probably just my pet hate, but the thing with stand-up meetings every morning. And then the idea is that stand-up meetings, they're going to be really efficient, like 5 minutes tops. And we can talk through the day, like, what are you going to work on today? And that's going to be really good. And of course, it never is a team of 5 people that only talk, 1 minute each for what they're doing. It usually grows into 20 people. And people are standing there for half an hour. Some people are just fall down and being exhausted. And people are getting more and more bored with these meetings and are just sort of fiddling on their phones and just like, I can update Twitter, which looks like they're playing with themselves or something, which is quite awkward. And then it also sort of gets into this, I don't know if you have this term, but blind shitting, which basically means you go to the bathroom, you don't have to go to the toilet, you go to the bathroom just to have the chance to be alone and sit down, you and your phone, quality time. So we have people taking off from stand-up meetings, just, sitting there. It's like, you've been in there for half an hour. Are you okay? It's like, yeah. So we need to make sure I'm not the meetings kind of guy, but meetings could be really useful. But we need to make sure that they're really efficient, that we get the most out of it. And also, when you approach things, you need to think, what do you want to get out of it? What's the main point? What's the goal with what you're doing? Again, why are you doing something? I think it's also about going all the way. And probably as developers, we become more and more lazy. Like you build a widget or an extension or whatever it is, and we work on it for maybe a month tops, and then you get bored with it and you move on. But the problem is that, and if you come back to the sharing code, people have used it, and you're like, nah, I don't feel like it. I'm not going to update it anymore. And that's the thing, like, if you do something, make sure you don't do it half-ass. Do it all the way. And it's also about stopping being afraid. I had this thing of, when you're a young person and you do all these crazy things and you're not really afraid of getting physically hurt, and then you get older and that shit actually hurts, and you get more and more afraid of that. So a number of years ago, I felt I got, more and more afraid of doing things in the physical world. So I was traveling far away in a country, and there was this water park and this really high tower with water slides going down. And I look up and say, not that high. I'm a big boy. I can do this. So I climbed up the water slide and I got up. I was like, holy shit, this is really, really high. And you look at a water slide, this is really, really steep. Then, of course, you have 10-year young kids running by you. It's like, wee, wah! And just flying down. And you're just, shaking. I'm going to do this. I can do it. Eventually I did. And when I came down, it's like, I survived. Tear in the corner of your eye. But it was also the thing of I hit something on the way down. So I started bleeding, of course, which made it more manly. I don't know what it's manly, actually, but I was bleeding and I was good. And then you have sort of your swimming pants, but all the water's sort of going all the way. So I was a mess when I came down, but I did it. And I think that's the point that, things are going to hurt and it's okay. And at the end of the day, what I see in many cases is that people are afraid of sharing information because of lack of confidence or self-doubt. Like, no, I'm not very good. Everyone's dealing with if you heard about the imposter syndrome, like you're only waiting for someone to find out that you're not as good as you pretend to be. Stop worrying. Like, everyone sucks on the same level. Or everyone's amazing. And work-wise, I think with jobs, you have two different kinds of people. And I'll try saying this in a respectful way, but you have people that stay around in the same kind of job for 20 years. And that's okay. And then you have people that work somewhere for 2 years tops, and they keep on moving on to the next thing. And it used to be like people looking at a resume, like, you had 10 different jobs in the last, 10 or 15 years. We can't hire you. You're just going to leave. Personally, I'm more afraid of people that stick around in the same place for 20 years. Because I know they're, in some cases, they're just afraid to get out of their boundary. They just keep like, I know my thing, and I have enough freedom, and I get paid enough, etc. I'm not going to take any risks. And that is the risk. That it, like, you got to get stagnant. You won't evolve. So if you're not happy with your job, your current situation, don't just quit. Try to make it better. But if it gets to a point like, it's not going to get better, I'm just going to put up with this, or quit, move on. It's just a job. Also, with the future, you need to make sure when it comes to quitting and all that, what do you want to get out of the future? Like, people have different approaches to how to solve it. Time travel could be one thing, and then it's okay. But make sure that you know what you want to do, at least what you want to try. You might not want to know the end goal, but what you're going for. Which sort of leads me to Mozilla. I work for Mozilla, and for me, all the things that I've been talking about and the things I do in my daily work is sort of trying to live up to this and see with us as an organization, how can we make sure that things are better? And there has been Firefox OS phones here. And I just want to mention why I personally find it interesting and why I think it's different. Because I think for many people, it's like, yay, it's like, yay, another browser. It's more like, yay, another mobile operating system. And I think it needs to be stressed that the important difference is, well, first for us as Mozilla, we're a non-profit. We're not in it for money. We make sure that we have enough income from different collaborations to stay afloat. That's the thing. We're not, making sure that we have a good stock evolution or something like that. And the interesting thing with Firefox OS is that there is a number that is being thrown around. Like, in the next few years, 2 billion more people are going to come online, and a vast majority of them are going to do it through mobiles. And in North America and in Western Europe, we're well off. I think there's a number, and I might be wrong here, but I think with New York Times and subscriptions, I think the average number of devices a subscriber has is 6 different devices. Holy shit. And that's the way it is in the Western world. But what about the rest of the world? What about South America and Africa and Asia, etc.? And that's one of the main points with Firefox OS. How can we bring a smartphone experience to these people? How can we make sure that they get a proper experience with the web from the get-go? So it's important to know it's not really competing with iPhone or Nexus 4 or something like that. It's supposed to be cheap hardware. The main point is not to having something that's, the best hardware ever. The main point is enabling people to actually take part of the web. Most of them don't even have phones, or they have old feature phones, like, a Nokia phone where one button is bigger than the actual display. How can we make things better for them? In Africa, there's more people that have mobile phones than have electricity. So, like, you have villages where they have a pole in the middle, and you go there and you charge your phone and you take off for 3 more days. How can we make it better for them? I think it's also a phone for developers. Like, the things we've seen with iOS and Android is that you need to, like, you have one of these disgusting words like ecosystem. So the nature has ecosystems, the other thing is just business models, okay? Big difference. And, you know, good platforms, interesting platforms, but you need to tie into their world. And how can we get out of that? And that's the point. Like, everything on the phone is just HTML5, CSS, and JavaScript. Everything in the user interface as well. So it's about building a phone for developers as well. Like, we try to make sure that it is as open as possible, as hackable as possible, so you can make sure that you can do whatever you want to, what you need to do. And performance-wise, it's not that, you know, strong compared to the high-end phones. But I think that's an excellent exercise as a developer, because we keep on talking about more disk space and better connectivity and you know, better processors on mobile phones. And we're sort of getting carried away. It's like, yeah, I have my mobile website. It's only 10 megabytes to download. Excellent experience. And it's good to get out of that. We also have, just briefly mention that we have a marketplace where people can put apps into here, but into here. And the interesting thing here is, though, that the marketplace is good and it's a way of exposing yourself, but you don't have to use it. Like, you could host apps from your own website if you want to, which is only HTML5 mobile websites, basically. Or you can build your own marketplace. Like, if you have a gaming marketplace, for instance, you can have your own marketplace and sell apps only focused on gaming. And that's the thing. Like, the difference we're trying to do is to have developers have any kind of way of building things and sharing things. That's the important part, not for us owning the process or approving apps. And we also have a small part about how you develop things and information about that. And I think I'll just quickly say to get started and to talk about that, we have something called the Firefox OS Simulator, which is an extension to Firefox that you can run. And one thing there is that we've been discussing workflow a lot. Like, so when you build things for the web, you just keep on coding in your editor, and you press reload in the browser, and you see the result. It's like, oh, this is terrible, and then you fix it again. The same thing here now. Like, within the simulator, you can build something in your editor. You go into the simulator, you press Command R or Control R, reload, and you see the result in your app. Like, it reinstalls the app and shows the result. And that's what we want. It should be as easy as possible to build something. I briefly put together a Firefox OS boilerplate app as well, just to show how you can utilize all these different APIs and activities and make the web better. So, sort of rounding off here, I think one important thing also when we talk about anything from acknowledging and helping each other or coding is getting help. Like, if we get help, we can fix things the way they should have been done. Okay? And that's important. Really looking forward to Survey 7. And I think it's also about trying things out and not being afraid of failing. So one of my daughters had a birthday recently, and we thought it would be an interesting idea to give them letter cookies. So basically, you know, each cookie is a letter, like the letter L and the letter F, etc. And, you know, she was turning 8. So let's see if they will spell something with these cookies. It took about 30 seconds, and we had that. So that was the first one out, which is slightly terrifying and kind of a red rum moment, and you need to talk to her parents. But it's also wonderful, albeit scary, but it's wonderful because you never know what to expect. And I think that's what's so wonderful with the web and with the new mobile operating system. Like, we don't know what you're going to do with it, but just do something. Just try something. Break it, but live, damn it. Live. So keep on trying and keep on doing mistakes. But above all, keep on thinking, what are you going to do with your life? You know, we're only here for a short time. We only get a few chances to do something. Don't waste that. Make sure that it actually counts. Thank you.
We have time.
No. Okay. Do you want to say?
Questions?
While preparing for this talk, did you actually learn anything, or are you already following your own advices?
Sorry?
When you made this talk, did you learn something as well, or are you already living after what you were telling us?
It's going to be a long reply. So what I love, what gets me going, is that the question? So, well, personally, I love doing something different or taking the risks of, because if we don't risk anything, we have nothing to gain. If we keep on doing the same things we've always been doing, we're not going to get anywhere. It's like learning to walk, and you keep on falling down, you hurt yourself. But if you wouldn't keep on trying, we would do the same thing. And for me, what I love is, well, it's to be able to talk to people and to learn from people, to get away from thinking that I know everything and instead try to become better or get another perspective. I hope that answers it. It's kind of a weird, rambling thing.
For those of us who didn't ask the right questions, how can we easily obtain one of the developer phones?
Right. So the phones that you received here, basically the phones have been built by something called Geeks Phone, and in collaboration with Telefonica. So in the Geeks Phone forums, they have specific Firefox OS builds. So in most cases, in other phones we have, you could download the code and build it yourself, but these have been special developer preview phones. So I can show you later, but it's in a forum. You can download different builds, and you can just flash your phone with a new build. There will also be over-the-air updates. So in general, you don't have to do anything, but if you want to have manual control, which you usually want, you can update the entire operating system, or you can just flash a new user interface, and then you can download. So Gaia is the code name of the user interface for Firefox OS. So you can download that from GitHub, and you can flash it to your phone directly, and you get the latest icons or the latest animations or whatever. But come see me, and I'll help.
I think that guy was asking for a phone. So who gets the phone? You get to pick which question gets the phone.
This question gets the phone.
Yeah, the more subtle one.
Because you already have one as well, so that was easy.
Thank you.